I know, as a practitioner myself, it's like, hey, I'll put people on slippery elm, aloe vera, glutamine, kind of like an all-in-one supplement to support the tight junctions, and then also throw in maybe some probiotics, prebiotics if they're able to tolerate those. And sometimes we get results, and sometimes we don't, right? And especially the people that have kind of been dealing with issues for a long period of time, those people typically they say, well, I'm not getting any better using this. And so we got to look deeper. And so why do you think that is? Why do you think when somebody's taking expensive supplements that work for a good percentage of people, they're just not getting results with them? Why do you think that would be?
Yeah, and that's what I, have written about for a long time as well. That sort of stack that you just mentioned. And it was definitely cutting edge, I think, a while ago. And I think it does work for many people, but there's also these tough cases that it just doesn't work for. And I think trying to solve that for people, including myself, has led me to this atmospheric sort of layer, this first sort of principle that I think a lot of people, whether you're a naturopath or you're kind of looking at it from a landscape perspective, if you don't have the right environment for the gut to behave, you can't expect it to behave correctly. And so probiotics and prebiotics and the leaky gut powders are all adding either missing nutrients or agents to support mucosal healing or tight junction healing or increasing the microbiome layer. But we're all failing to maybe understand that these folks who are stuck, who are not getting better, they might not have the right oxygen environment to even accept those supplements to do the work. And I think that has been sort of a 180 mind-blowing moment for me about a year ago when I started re-looking at this stuff around why are some people just so stuck and they can't get better. And it appears to me, based on the research and what I've been looking at, like for instance, we know that if you take antibiotics, pretty much one of the first things that's going to happen is the oxygen level in your gut is going to go up. And that is actually not what you want. It's weird, right? We want our tissues, we want all of our cells to be highly oxygenated, but inside of our gut, we actually want it to be hypoxic or low oxygen, which is really hard to at least hard for me to wrap my head around for a long time. And so if you give antibiotics, several studies have demonstrated that, number one, we lose microbiome species, and potentially that is the cause of why the oxygen goes up in the gut. And then in order to get the oxygen back down, we actually kind of need those species back, and we need what those species give to the gut cells to restart this other type of metabolism that we can go into that creates this hypoxic, low oxygen gut.
Yeah, interesting. So, different tissues are going to have different needs. It's kind of like in the stomach, we want it to be highly acidic, yet in the small intestine, we want it to be alkaline, even though, they work together. And so in our tissues, we want our tissues to be highly oxygenated, but in the small intestine, particularly small intestine, I think you're talking about, or is it the entire colon, small and large intestine? We want it to be more anaerobic.
Yeah, basically actually drops right from your mouth all the way to your
Yeah.
anus. It gets less and less oxygenated or more hypoxic as you go down
Mm.
all the feet.
Yeah, really interesting. So that's an important thing for us to remember. We want it to be more anaerobic inside of in a sense, the intestinal tube. So let's go into that. Like obviously you mentioned antibiotics, they're causing a more high oxygenated state, less anaerobic state. So why is oxygen so important? When we have a higher anaerobic state, does that help kill pathogens? Why is that environment so healthy?
Yeah, it's so beautiful. It's like if you do any kind of stool test, right, or any sort of microbiome testing, you'll have these buckets, and some tests will break it down by anaerobic bacteria. And a lot of the bugs that we are trying to stimulate or regrow from dysbiosis using prebiotics and probiotics are anaerobic bacteria. And as you just mentioned, that literally means without oxygen. And so if the environment is too high of oxygen, these specific bugs that we want for a healthy microbiome literally cannot grow. Like that, they don't, it's like us trying to live on the moon or on Mars. It's not the right conditions for us to live there. without support. And so these bugs need the atmosphere to change so that they can actually survive. And so that is like at the most basic level, I've been trying to solve this question of how do we heal these people with like chronic dysbiosis, chronic leaky gut? And I feel like this is one of the biggest issues that we're struggling with, is that the products are great. We're making breakthroughs in products, every year, and yet these people don't seem to be, regrowing and get rid of the leaky gut symptoms and all this stuff. And so I feel like that is step one. And then if you start to go deeper than that, like after you look at can we get rid of dysbiosis and stuff, what you realize is that a low oxygen environment stimulates these things called hypoxia inducible factors. And there's an alpha and a beta. And these are really complex signaling molecules. The literature is not even sure exactly all the interactions with them yet. There's a bunch of drug trials going on right now where they're trying to block one or upregulate another one for certain types of cancer or IBD, IBS, those types of things. But what I would say is conclusive about the research is that you need enough of them expressing themselves, the HIFs, because they actually help express tight junction integrity. Like without them, you're basically guaranteed to have no tight junction integrity. Without enough HIFs, you're basically guaranteed to lose your mucosal barrier. And you're basically guaranteed to have this high oxygen environment with a dysbiotic microbiome. And so we need a proper expression of both HIF alpha and HIF beta together. If one gets too high or one gets too low, you can get into these, complex chronic disease states, like I just mentioned, like IBD and things like that. But these HIFs are sort of like the signals to the rest of the cells inside the gut and the rest of the layers in the gut to be in integrity, to be okay. And without them or too much of them, it all falls apart really quickly.
Now, the HIFs, are they classified as immune cells? Are they signaling molecules? What exactly are they?
Yeah, they're signaling molecules.
Yeah, interesting. And so based around the balance there of the alpha and the beta, like you said, and I guess the overall amount of them, that's going to help dictate if it's in a anaerobic or an aerobic state. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So basically, certain bugs inside the microbiome will take out oxygen from inside the gut. And these are like good species that we want in our microbiome test. So some bugs eat the oxygen and they need that for their metabolism. They give off short chain fatty acids like butyrate and propanonate, acetate. Those things cause an even better diverse microbiome. But then also what it does is generates a lot of butyrate, which are colonocytes and some of the other epithelial cells will take the butyrate and do a different type of metabolism that also sucks oxygen out of the gut. So when it's all working properly, the anaerobic bacteria and the facultative anaerobic bacteria are sucking oxygen out. They're turning it into these other metabolites, these postbiotics. And then the gut is taking those postbiotics out, doing more sucking of oxygen out of the gut. And when that happens, it creates the HIFs. Then those HIFs sort of propagate out. They tell the immune cells, hey, release a little bit more of this. They tell the tight junctions to be certain amount of expression or not. They release these beta defensin things, which are chemicals that can go out and like sort of attack bad things in your gut. And so it's this really cool, complex web that is when it's working properly, that's how it works. If we have some sort of injury like the antibiotic type thing or something else where we lose that ability to suck oxygen out on a regular basis, the loop starts to break down. And then we get this chronic dysregulation of not enough HIFs or too much HIF production. And, stimulating or shutting that off seems to be one of the ongoing things that you find as a hallmark of IBD or IBS.
Very interesting. And is there a way to test to see what your HIF status is or how much oxygen is in your gut environment?
So right now, I'm not aware of any commercially available HIF testing. I'm guessing this is coming because, like I said, they're doing drug trials right now on some certain HIF blocking drugs. And I don't know that the first actual like models of a low oxygen gut are literally just publishing their first papers right now. So the capacity to like stick a microbe in there and test your level, I think is probably a ways away. Like this is pretty cutting edge stuff. But what I think we could do is we could look at the next layer of what would be true if you had a low oxygen gut. So if you had a healthy gut, a low oxygen gut, you would see a very diverse microbiome, number one. So your microbiome testing that you did would show like a very healthy balance of all the different types of microbiome species. It wouldn't be weighted one way or the other, and it would have plenty of anaerobic bacteria. So you'd have a large amount of anaerobic bacteria growth on these tests. And then if you're doing a test that measures short chain fatty acid production, you would have plentiful amounts of short chain fatty acid production, all three of them, the three most commonly tested for, which are, again, butyrate, acetate, and propanonate. So that would be sort of my way of saying, like, is your gut properly oxygenated?
Yeah. So again, there's, these bacteria that grow in more of an aerobic environment, and then bacteria that grow in the anaerobic environment. And so there's a larger number that grow in an anaerobic environment. And that's why the diversity would go up, because it creates an environment that's more ripe for them to grow and develop. And then there's, the ones that grow in a more aerobic environment, they are more pathogenic when they overgrow inside of our system. So you're going to start to see that on a stool analysis. And then, like you said, those postbiotic molecules, the short chain fatty acids, are going to increase, and they have a very anti-inflammatory effect on the body, because now we got to link this to the overall inflammatory levels in the body, right? Because that's what people are feeling and experiencing. So the better the short chain fatty acid production, the lower levels of inflammation.